The moment the cold needle pierced my skin, I flinched instinctively. This was the 3rd year of my marriage to Adrian Thorne, and my 17th time lying on this sterile, frigid bed to donate blood for the woman he loved, Serafina. My blood, Rh-negative O type, was the only known match for Serafina in the entire city. Because of this, I never felt like Adrian's wife. I was more like a living blood bank he kept, a vessel existing solely for the life of another woman. The VIP ward was unnervingly silent. The only sounds the monotonous beep of the monitor and the faint whisper of my blood being slowly drawn from my body. Adrian stood by the window, his tall frame impeccably dressed in an expensive, custom-tailored suit. The setting sun cast his profile in sharp, cold lines. He never looked at me, as if the woman on the bed, giving her life for his beloved, was nothing more than an inanimate tool. "Mr. Thorne," the doctor began, his voice cautious, beads of sweat on his brow. "Mrs. Thorne's vitals are at a critical level. This amount of blood, it could be dangerous." Adrian finally moved, but not to look at me. His voice, devoid of any warmth, cut through the doctor's warning. "Proceed. Serafina can't wait." Those words, like 3 ice-coated needles, stabbed directly into my heart. I felt my life force draining away with the warmth of my blood, a profound chill seeping into my bones. With my last ounce of strength, I reached out my free hand, my fingers trembling as they grasped the hem of his jacket. "Adrian, I'm so cold. Hold me." My voice was a barely audible whisper, laced with a pathetic plea that I myself found pitiable. He finally turned his head. In his deep, ocean-like eyes, there was no concern, only a thick, suffocating wave of impatience and disgust. "Alara, stop playing these games for sympathy." He brushed my hand away as if touching something unclean. "This is the last time. Your task is complete. After this, we are even." Even. So these 3 years, which I had considered a marriage, a love I had given my all for, were nothing more than a transaction in his eyes. My task was to trade my blood for his lover's life. My vision blurred. The rhythmic beeping of the EKG monitor stretched into a long, piercing tone. As my consciousness faded into the final darkness, my last thought echoed with a desperate wish. If I could do it all over again, I, Alara, would never love you. A clap of thunder ripped through the night, jolting me awake. I shot up in bed, my chest heaving as I gasped for air. Cold sweat soaked my hair, clinging to my cheeks. I looked around in a daze. This wasn't the sterile white hospital room. This was my marital bedroom with Adrian. Every piece of furniture was exquisitely expensive, yet as cold and soulless as a gilded cage. For 3 years, I had never felt a shred of warmth here. Outside, the rain poured in torrents, and flashes of lightning intermittently illuminated the room. Trembling, I lifted my arm. In the fleeting light of the storm, my skin was smooth, flawless. There were no needle marks, no lingering bruises from years of forced donations. "I'm not dead," I whispered, my voice raw. Was it all a dream? The agony of dying, the crushing despair, it had all felt so terrifyingly real. Just then, the phone on the bedside table buzzed to life. The screen lit up, displaying a name, Adrian's assistant. That phone call, this room, this exact stormy night. My eyes widened in shock. I remembered. This was 3 years ago, exactly 1 month after our wedding. It was the same downpour, the same phone call that had pulled me from my sleep and initiated my 3-year sentence as a human blood bag. It was the true beginning of my tragedy. I was reborn. The phone continued its incessant buzzing. I stared at it, the initial shock and fear in my eyes hardening into a glacial coldness, a hatred so deep it felt etched into my very soul. Slowly, I reached for the phone, my fingertips white from the pressure of my grip, and answered. "Mrs. Thorne." The assistant's voice was as robotic and devoid of emotion as I remembered. "Mr. Thorne is at the hospital. Miss White is not doing well and requires an immediate transfusion. Please come at once." The same script, the same commanding tone as my past life. The Alara of that life had been heartbroken to hear her husband was with another woman, yet she had foolishly rushed out into the storm to his side. A cold, mocking smile touched my lips. I cleared my throat, my voice eerily calm. "Tell Adrian Thorne," I said, enunciating each word with chilling precision. that his wife was caught in the rain last night. She's dying of a fever. He can figure it out himself. Before the assistant could process my words, I ended the call. Then, I switched the phone off and tossed it into the dark corner under the bed, a symbol of my broken chains. For the first time in years, the world was silent. I sat in the darkness for a long time, the storm outside a fitting symphony for the tempest in my soul. When the rain began to subside, I rose from the bed, my bare feet sinking into the plush, expensive carpet that had always felt like walking on ice. This house, every inch of it, was a monument to Adrian's taste and my past life's foolish, unrequited love. I walked into the massive walk-in closet. Racks upon racks of designer dresses hung in perfect order, all in the pale, inoffensive shades Adrian preferred for me: white, beige, baby pink. He liked his canary beautiful and harmless. Today, I walked past them all, to the darkest corner, and pulled out a dress I had bought myself, one he had scorned as being too ostentatious. It was a long, silk gown the color of the midnight sea, deep and dangerous. The fabric felt cool and smooth against my skin. Dressed, I sat before the vanity. The woman in the mirror was pale, but her eyes were no longer the timid, gentle pools of a doe. They were the eyes of a wolf, sharp and forged in the fires of betrayal. I opened a makeup case I had never dared to use, not to please anyone, but as a warrior dons armor before a battle. I concealed the weariness under my eyes, sculpted my cheekbones, and lined my eyes to make them appear sharper, more piercing. Finally, I picked up a lipstick in a shade of defiant, blood red. It was a color of power, of passion, of rebellion, everything I had suppressed for him. As the vivid crimson coated my lips, the woman in the mirror became a stranger, a queen ready to reclaim her throne. The reflection of the old, submissive Alara was gone forever. I went downstairs and brewed myself a pot of Earl Grey tea. The fragrant steam warmed my cold hands. I settled onto the velvet sofa in the grand living room, the teacup a fragile anchor in the impending storm. I knew he would come. It took less than 30 minutes. The front door slammed open with a force that echoed through the silent mansion. Adrian strode in, drenched and furious, his custom suit dripping onto the marble floor. He looked around, his eyes blazing, searching for the weeping, pathetic creature he expected to find. When his gaze landed on me, sitting calmly on the sofa, a vision of composed defiance, his prepared tirade died in his throat. His wife, the woman who lived to please him, was dressed in a color he hated, wearing makeup he despised, and sipping tea as if he were an unwelcome intruder in his own home. The sight was so alien, so utterly out of character, that it momentarily stunned him. "Alara, do you have any idea what you're doing?" he finally managed to growl, stalking towards me, his presence sucking the air from the room. "Serafina is waiting for you to save her life." I met his furious gaze and slowly, deliberately, placed my teacup back on its saucer with a soft click. I looked up at him, my expression a mask of serene indifference. "Oh, she's dying," I asked, my voice light and airy. "What does that have to do with me? Am I a doctor?" "You will say that again," he hissed, his control snapping. He lunged forward, his hand clamping around my wrist like a manacle. The pressure was immense, a brutal reminder of his physical power over me. "Don't you forget whose charity you're living on. Without the Thorne family, you would be nothing." Pain shot up my arm, but I didn't flinch. Instead, a genuine, mirthless laugh escaped my lips. It was a sound he had never heard from me before, and it made him pause. "My life? Adrian, what life?" I looked directly into his eyes, my own filled with a chilling mixture of sorrow and mockery. "The life you speak of was paid for, 17 times over, with my own blood. As for the Alara who loved you, she died. She died on that cold, sterile operating table the 17th time you watched her blood drain away without a second glance." I wrenched my arm from his grasp with a strength that surprised us both. I stumbled back, then straightened my posture, my gaze unwavering. I said, "We're getting a divorce, Adrian." I reached under the coffee table and retrieved the document I had printed and signed in the dead of night. I slapped it down on the polished wood between us. The sound was definitive, a gavel strike on our sham of a marriage. "I want nothing from you. I will walk out of here with nothing but the clothes on my back," I stated, my voice as cold and hard as a diamond. All you have to do is sign this paper. Your beloved Serafina needs blood, and I, Adrian, need to live. Do you understand me now? He stared at the divorce papers, then back at me, his handsome face a canvas of disbelief and fury. The woman before him was a stranger. Her eyes held no love, no fear, not even the hatred he could have understood. They held only emptiness, a vast, chilling void where her adoration used to be. And that terrified him more than any outburst. A divorce? He scoffed, a desperate attempt to regain control. Alara, have you forgotten how you begged to marry me? How you professed your undying love? What is this, a new tactic to get more money out of me? Love you. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. A bitter laugh escaped me again, this time tinged with tears I refused to shed. Yes, I did. I loved you with every fiber of my being. But that Alara is dead. You killed her, Adrian. You, and your precious Serafina. I watched his face, saw the flicker of confusion and a nascent, unfamiliar guilt in his eyes. For the first time, he seemed to be questioning himself. I didn't give him a chance to recover. I turned my back on him, walked up the grand staircase without a sound, and locked myself in the guest room, leaving him alone with the damning document and the ruins of his perfect, controlled world. He stood there for a long time, the silence of the mansion pressing in on him. His gilded cage was suddenly empty, and the canary he thought he owned had not just flown, but had transformed into a phoenix, ready to burn his world to the ground. Adrian remained rooted to the spot long after the click of the guest room lock echoed through the house. He expected tears, screaming, another desperate plea for his attention. He did not expect this cold, resolute silence. He spent the night on the living room sofa, the untouched divorce papers a glaring white beacon on the dark wood of the coffee table. He told himself she was bluffing. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. By morning, she would come down, apologetic and submissive as always. But morning came, and the house remained silent. An unfamiliar unease settled in his gut. He went upstairs and found the guest room door unlocked, the room empty. He strode to their master bedroom. The vast, immaculate space was just as he had left it. But on the velvet-lined tray of her vanity, where she kept her most precious items, lay the single, heavy diamond ring he had given her. The heart of eternity. It sat there, cold and mocking, severed from her finger and their vows. A cold dread, sharp and unwelcome, pierced through his arrogance. He immediately called his security team. "Find her," he commanded, his voice tight. "I want to know her every move." But there were no moves to track. Alara had vanished. The city's surveillance network, which Adrian could manipulate with a single phone call, yielded nothing. It was as if she had dissolved into thin air. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles away, in a quiet seaside town, a woman with a new, stylishly short haircut stepped out of a taxi. Alara breathed in the salty air, a scent of freedom she hadn't realized she'd been craving for 3 long years. She had used the private savings she'd squirreled away, the only thing that had ever truly been hers, to rent a small, sun-drenched studio apartment with a view of the ocean. Her phone, a new, untraceable burner, rang. "Leo," she answered, a genuine warmth in her voice for the first time in what felt like an eternity. "Alara, are you safe?" Leo's voice was a comforting balm. He was her best friend from university, the one person who had seen the darkness in Adrian long before she was willing to admit it. "I'm safe, Leo. I'm finally free," she said, looking out at the endless blue horizon. "I received your email," he said, his tone shifting to business. "Phoenix Designs, registered. And the portfolio you sent. Alara, these are brilliant. You're ready to take on the world." "Not the world," she corrected him softly, a dangerous glint in her eye. "Just the Thorn Empire. Leo, I need you. I need a partner I can trust." There was no hesitation. "Always. Whatever you need, I'm here." She hung up and walked over to her new drafting table, where pristine sheets of paper waited. She picked up a charcoal pencil, the feel of it familiar and empowering. The ghosts of her past life whispered doubts, Adrian's dismissive words echoing in her memory. A silly hobby, he had called it, unbecoming of a thorn. She smiled, a sharp, predatory smile. "Let's see how silly it is, Adrian, when it brings your empire to its knees." For the next 3 months, Alara disappeared from the world she had known and poured her entire being into her work. The cramped studio became her sanctuary and her war room. The walls were covered in sketches, gemstone samples, and market analyses of Thorn Group's luxury division. She worked with a feverish intensity, fueled by years of suppressed creativity and a burning desire for retribution. Her new brand, Phoenix, was built on a philosophy of rebirth and strength. Her designs were bold, unconventional, and deeply personal. They told stories of breaking free, of finding beauty in scars, of power reclaimed. She worked under the pseudonym Echo, a name signifying that her silenced voice would now resonate through her creations. With Leo's help managing the business logistics from the capital, Echo submitted her centerpiece collection, the Phoenix's Lament, to the prestigious Geneva International Design Competition. It was a long shot, a new, unknown designer competing against heritage houses and giants like Thorn Group. But Alara knew her work was good. It was more than good. It was a piece of her soul. Back in the city, Adrian's frustration was mounting. Alara was gone, and without her blood, Serafina's health was a ticking time bomb. The private hospitals he controlled could only do so much to manage her condition with conventional blood supplies. He was growing tired of Serafina's constant fragility, her tearful calls, her cloying dependence. An uncomfortable thought began to surface. Was it Serafina's health he was worried about, or the loss of his absolute control over Alara? He dismissed the thought as absurd. He was worried about Serafina, of course. She was the delicate flower he had sworn to protect. Alara was just a responsibility, a stubborn, ungrateful responsibility who had dared to defy him. His investigation into the designer, Echo, hit a dead end. The name was a ghost. The company registered through a series of shell corporations Leo had expertly set up. The designs, however, were making waves in the industry, their bold aesthetic a direct challenge to the classic, conservative style that Thorn Jewels had built its reputation on. Adrian felt a new kind of anger, the anger of a king whose authority was being challenged by an upstart. He would be in Geneva for the competition. He wanted to see this mysterious Echo for himself. The grand ballroom in Geneva was a sea of glittering jewels and hushed, important voices. Adrian sat at the head table, the very picture of bored, untouchable power. Thorn Group's Heart of the Ocean collection was the favorite to win, a predictable but masterfully executed line of sapphire and diamond pieces. Then, the final award of the night was announced. The Golden Phoenix Prize for Innovation and Artistry. In a stunning upset, the presenter's voice boomed. The jury has unanimously awarded this year's highest honor to a newcomer whose work has redefined modern jewelry. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Echo for the Phoenix's Lament. A collective gasp went through the room. All eyes turned to the stage as a figure emerged from the wings. A woman in a stark white power suit, her short hair impeccably styled, her posture radiating an unshakable confidence. She wore a silver mask that covered the top half of her face, leaving only her lips, painted a searing, defiant red, and a strong, determined jawline visible. Adrian leaned forward, a strange sense of familiarity prickling at him. There was something about her bearing, the way she moved. On stage, the designer accepted the award. She walked to the podium, and for a moment, the room was silent. Then, slowly, she raised a hand and removed the mask. The light caught her face, and time seemed to stop. For Adrian Thorn, the world tilted on its axis. The polite applause, the music, the murmurs of the crowd, it all faded into a deafening roar in his ears. It was Alara, his Alara, but it wasn't. The woman on that stage was a stranger. Her eyes, which used to hold only timid adoration for him, now swept across the audience with the cool, appraising gaze of a conqueror. They met his for a fleeting second, and in them, he saw not a flicker of recognition, only the faintest hint of a cold, triumphant smile. His wine glass slipped from his numb fingers and shattered on the floor, the sound lost in the renewed, thunderous applause. She had not just left him. She had been reborn from the ashes of the woman he thought he had broken, and she had come back to burn his kingdom down,